U.S. athletes brought home a full set of hardware from Baku. Heath Thorpe gave his insight into just how much it costs to be an elite athlete, and Nazar Chepurnyi made perhaps the greatest gymnastics post of all time. For those new here, I'm Kensley, the host of Neutral Deductions, a podcast all about men's gymnastics. This is episode 61, where I recap week 9 of the NCAA season, plus elite news.
This is the Neutral Deductions podcast. Men's gymnastic news, coverage, and analysis.
Okay, we have to start with the Baku World Cup, where Nazar Chepurnyi created possibly the funniest piece of gymnastics content I have ever seen in my entire life, with honorable mention to the Kazakhstan team. I don't know that I have ever laughed so much in my entire life. So most of us around here know that the FIG created a new rule where all men's gymnasts must do a scale in their routine. And a lot of athletes have been bemoaning this. In my episode with Colt Walker a little bit back, he said, I don't know that I can even do a scale. And other athletes have been like, oh my gosh, I have never done this in my life. Like, I don't think this is going to go well. And we have seen a couple of really funny casualties. So Nazar Chepurnyi gets up ready to go on floor exercise. He does incredibly difficult tumbling, and he puts this, upbeat piece of music to all of his tumbling. And then he gets to his scale. And for those of you who are on like the TikTok, Instagram, reel sort of things, there is a trend where if something doesn't go quite as well as you plan, that the song from Titanic, My Heart Will Go On, gets played really poorly on like a little flute or recorder, and it's hysterical. So he goes along, he does all of his tumbling passes, and then he gets to his scale where he does the airplane scale, where you're on one leg and you lower your chest towards the ground and your arms are splayed out trying to balance. And he is just like wobbling all over the place. And in the background of the video, you can see the team and the coaches from Kazakhstan losing their mind. It is so funny. And so like he's making fun of himself, like his friends on, other teams from around the globe are also making fun of him. And if you haven't seen it, you absolutely need to go see this piece of gymnastics content, especially if you're having a bad day, because it will certainly make your day better. Now, probably the funniest part of this for me was that when he went on to finals, he changed the type of scale so that he did this scale where you lift your foot up and hold it with one hand. It's the one that Asher Hong does so beautifully. And Nazar's not quite as flexible as Asher is, so it's different and maybe a little bit better executed, but it's not quite what we would want necessarily. So I think there's still a little bit of work to be done. But anyway, thank you to Nazar for that gymnastics content, because it was definitely something that I needed. So in terms of what all happened at the Baku World Cup, this was the second World Cup of 6 in the FIG series. The U.S. did immensely well, bringing home a full set of medals. So Brandon Dang won pommel horse, Patty Hoops got second to him, and then Alex Diab got bronze. So they were bringing home gold, silver, and bronze. And this was actually pretty stunning and historic overall. And I've been surprised to not see a few more articles come out about this. So this is the first time for the U.S. that they have ever brought home a 1-2 punch on pommel horse at a World Cup since the open-ended code. Now, the reason I only went back to the open-ended code is because I only had to dig through the archives till 2006 versus having to go back through the archives, to the 70s and beyond. And a lot of those PDFs aren't searchable, so it actually takes quite a bit of time to really make sure that you have the answers correct. So I did at least go back through the open-ended code, and through what I could find, this feat has actually only been accomplished one other time by a U.S. men's gymnastics pair, and it was on floor exercise. So Eddie Penev and Donnell Wittenberg went 1-2 at the 2017 Copper World Challenge Cup. And so this isn't even exactly the same tier of competition. For the FIG, they categorize the World Cups and the World Challenge Cup a little bit differently. And it also affects what type of judges can be there and different aspects like that. So this is really historic, and I wish it was being talked about more. Like if you go back and look at the Eddie Pennev, Donnell Wittenberg 1-2 punch, like NBC did a whole article on this and a few other people as well. And I haven't seen anyone post about this. So I think that this is incredible, and I think it's a really big deal. And I think it's something that we should be talking about a little bit more. Now, speaking of Eddie Pennev, he made his return to competition at the Baku World Cup. It's always good to see him back competing. He has just gone through so many injuries, and we certainly wish him well in this season. Now, overall at the Baku World Cup, I would say the field was pretty weak comparatively, and there's a couple reasons for this. And one of them is that Armenians are not permitted to enter Azerbaijan. And there's a long history to get into about why this is the case. But there can be some exceptions made for sport and other high-profile events, but the Armenian athletes have said that they don't feel safe going into Azerbaijan, and I think that that's something that needs to be respected. And I think that this brings to question and to light something for the FIG to consider as to why there are competitions happening in countries where general populations of people are not permitted to enter. So something to consider for the future, I would like to see World Cup competitions be in countries where all are permitted to enter without fearing for their own safety. Now, the reason I bring up the Armenians in particular is because, of course, many of them are extremely strong. Of course, the Dovtians, Archer Dovtian on vault, who's a world champion, who won the first World Cup of the series, and then Von Dovtian on still rings. So not having them there just kind of lowers the competition bar just a little bit. So that is part of the reason why the competition field wasn't as strong. And there just weren't a lot of athletes. Like when you look at some of the other World Cup rosters, this one was significantly smaller. And really, if I'm being honest, the only of the events that I feel like was actually pretty competitive was pommel horse. The rest of the events weren't really that competitive, and a lot of people who won those events, I would say, aren't even necessarily in the running to be a medalist at a world championship and would kind of barely make finals. And so I think it's really interesting. Of course, you want to congratulate everyone who won a medal, but just because they won a medal here doesn't necessarily that means that they will be competitive at other World Cups in the future or at the World Championships later this year. One other thing I wanted to mention before getting onto the winners was Chiba Kenta's ring. So Chiba Kenta is a very decorated athlete from Japan, and I'm really interested why Japan chose to put him up on still rings. It's pretty evident that he was not ready, and I don't know if he was sick, and I don't know if he's injured, but he couldn't hold any of his positions for the required 2 seconds. His handstands were wobbling all over the place. For his dismount, he wasn't able to get the tap that he needed and ended up just doing a double back that he over-rotated to his back on the ground. And just something pretty unusual that we don't see at this level of competition. Now, he was able to redeem himself a little bit, and he came back and was able to get a medal on high bar, but I think that that's just something to watch for the rest of the season. Moving on to the winners of the events in Baku. So Yuhar Sharapkov, he is a neutral athlete competing one floor with a 14.6, which I actually think is a pretty competitive score. One of the things that we've been learning across this World Cup series is what sort of score is going to be a good score that's going to be medal worthy or even just get into event finals. And what we're seeing now is anything in that mid 14 range is probably going to be where we're going to see athletes get into event finals at the World Championships, and maybe on some events even medals. So 14.6, quite good. Brandon Dane got a 14.633 on winning pommel horse. Again, a very good score. Nikita Simonov of Azerbaijan, the home country, on still rings, he won with a 14.233. I think this is a bit low. I think that this score would get into finals at the World Championships. I don't think a 14.233 is going to medal at a World Championships. Nazar Chepurnyi of Ukraine won vault with a 14.466. Again, a little bit hard to say. I think that could win a medal. Definitely is finals material at the World Championships later this year. And then Matsumi Kazuki of Japan won both parallel bars and high bar. And his score was a 14-2 on parallel bars and a 14-1 on high bar. That 14-2 on parallel bars, I think, is pretty low. Parallel bars is the deepest field in the world right now, and I think that score is a little bit low. 14-1, I think, would get into finals of the World Championship, but this is just something that we're going to be keeping an eye on, and I'll continually give my opinion as we get more data in this new Olympic cycle over these 6 World Cups. Moving on to the NCAA championships, I want to start off with a little bit of a scandal is too strong of a word, but a little bit of a question mark. So last week after week 8, the CGA named Asher Hong as the gymnast of the week. And I have some questions. Asher's a phenomenal athlete. I've been following him since he was 12 years old. Olympic bronze medalist. There's nothing to take away from how good of an athlete he is. But he did not perform particularly well at Penn State. He fell on his dismount on floor. He almost fell off pommel horse multiple times. He did fall off cell rings, but that was due to a grip issue and then was able to redo. But it wasn't his best day out. And it almost feels like the people who were voting for this award looked at his name, saw Asher Hong, thought, oh, he must have been the best because he's an Olympic and world medalist. We'll just give it to him. And he was not the best gymnast that week. And it makes me wonder, did people watch his routines, or did they just assume because his coach nominated him that he must have been the best athlete on Stanford's team, and because he's typically the best, we'll just vote for him? And I don't really understand how he could have been voted as athlete of the week otherwise. And so my question is, if the people in the community aren't even watching gymnastics enough to make an informed decision about who we should vote for athlete of the week, how can we possibly be encouraging other people to watch men's gymnastics? So again, nothing to take away from Asher as a human being or as an athlete, but I don't think the CGA got this particularly right. And I think it's important that we bring some accountability to voting, because this does matter, right? Asher has 100 accolades. He wasn't the best this week. He is not going to have his feelings hurt if he doesn't get this award this one time, right? He wasn't the best and he knows it. It's like when women in the NCAA get a 10 and they know that they didn't deserve it, right? Trinity Thomas is famous for having gotten a 10. I think it was on beam. And she was like, huh? Like, the athletes know when they have done a good job and when they should be rewarded for it. And for me, this wasn't it for Asher. Moving on to what happened in week 9. So Nebraska took home the top score of the week with a big 325.6. This is a big score. And, I've been hyping Nebraska for several years now, and they just haven't been able to put it all together at the NCAA championships. But they are one of the teams that I am considering for the NCAA title. And I think some people would look at me and call me crazy for that. But with this 4-up-4 count lineup, and with Stanford not being quite as deep as they have historically been the past couple years, all it takes is for a couple of the big teams to have a really poor day and have Nebraska knock it out of the park, and then they're NCAA champion, right? I don't think that they're going to be the favorite going in, but I don't think that they're out of the picture. So this is going to have been really encouraging to them in their fight for wanting to get back to the top of the NCAA podium. And I happen to know that they are particularly motivated because right now they are tied with Stanford for the longest winning streak. And then if Nebraska could be the one who sort of like stops Stanford from breaking this tie, I think they'll be like particularly motivated to go and do that. Another team I want to shout out for having a historic week was Simpson, who broke the 300 mark this week. They have been working so hard for this. They are a team only in their 3rd year. And for the most part, it's like week after week after week, they just continually get better and work hard. And I am so excited to watch them and continue to see what they can do in the future. Moving on to top scores of the week, Luke Tully of William & Mary took the all-around title with a 76.55. Jesse Pickell of Ohio State took floor with a 14.2. Coy Young is back after having surgery and after being injured. He came back on pommel horse 14.9. 14.9. That was higher than Brandon Ding won Baku with this past weekend. 14.9 is also the second highest score on pommel horse in the NCAA this year. It's only second to Patty Hoops, who had over a 15 earlier this year. So big score. This will be very important for Stanford to have back in their lineup. For still rings, it was a pair of Cornhuskers, Chris Heiser and Yanni Chronopoulos. They got a 14.25. Ricky Mays of Greenville, 14.4. So he is now back in their lineup. Stunning routine this week. Brandon Nguyen continues to be the champ on parallel bars, got a 14.05, and then of Ohio State, Christian Grahovsky got a 14. A quick thank you to all of you who wrote in about wanting to do office hours with Kensley and talking about the deductors being the name for the people who listen to this podcast. That was really encouraging, and I really appreciate all of that. We've got a couple of big things coming. There is a project that I've been working on with a judge for about 6 months now, and I'm hoping we're going to be able to launch it pretty soon. It's really exciting. I can't wait to share it with you, but I'm nervous to tease it out a little bit too much because it's a lot of work and I can't give you an exact timetable when it's coming, but it's really big and it's really exciting and it's going to be very useful to everyone. A couple other things that we're working on. We've got a great group of volunteers who are now writing articles for us, which has given me a little bit more time to dedicate to creating content for Instagram and YouTube, because creating graphics does take a lot of time. I'm not a professional, so it does take me quite a bit of time to get those started. So thank you again for all of your input and all of your continued support for Neutral Deductions. If you would like to help bring more men's gymnastics coverage to life, please consider donating. A massive thank you to everyone who has donated. We are almost entirely listener supported, so donations really do make a difference for us. If you would like to donate, you can donate via PayPal or Stripe, which is linked in every show note and at the bottom of every article at neutraldeductions.com. If you have questions, comments, or insider tips, just email us at neutraldeductions@gmail.com. That's all for this week. We'll see you next time.